Today we're going to talk about a little understood but very complex concept relating to the smart grid. That concept is called self-healing. Self-healing is an interesting concept in that many people think about self-healing as, is this grid going to mysteriously pick the wires back up after they fall down and put them back in place? No, that's not what the concept of self-healing is in the smart grid. The concept of self-healing applies to the ability for the grid to independently manage its load without the intervention of the control room operators. And how will that work? Let's take a very good example that many people in North America are aware of, and that was the great blackout that occurred August 14th, 2003, in which 50 million people lost power in North America. That blackout occurred because a power line, transmission line, sagged into a tree in Ohio. As a result of that sag, it took out a transmission line during a peak loading condition, a very hot day, and caused increased load to be on other circuits nearby. Those circuits couldn't handle the load, so they tripped out, causing a catastrophic series of events that went all through North America. By the time it was over, 50 million people had lost power. Now, how can the smart grid prevent that from happening? Let's take the assumption that we're way out in the future somewhere where we have home area networks all throughout our system, and those home area networks are talking to our grid, and specifically talking to some of the devices that are out on our transmission lines. So if you had a transmission line that was talking to the smart grid out in Ohio, that transmission line would have a device on it. That device might be what's called a recloser that's looking at the power flows. And that recloser would sense a condition. And that condition being a condition where all of a sudden you start to see what they call voltage collapse. Voltage collapse in the first few milliseconds, that recloser would respond and it would talk directly to residents and businesses in the area. And it would talk to those through their home area networks. The home area network is essentially a wireless network which is constantly communicating between all the appliances and equipment in homes and buildings directly to the grid. If there was that communication path back then, what would happen would be this recloser device would say, hey, we got a problem out here on our transmission line. Hey, home area networks, can you possibly shut down your optional loads until we get this thing figured out? So the home area networks would respond and say, okay, I've got a refrigerator, a freezer, I got an air conditioner, I've got a hot tub, I've got a bunch of appliances here that I can shut down for a period of time. Of course, we've had upfront agreements on what that period of time would be. So for example, your refrigerator, you might only shut down 15 minutes every 2 hours. The freezer, maybe only an hour every 3. Maybe the air conditioner gets turned from 72 to 75 degrees. All these agreements would be upfront with the consumer in place ahead of time. But in that critical event, all these appliances could drop their load for that short period of time while the grid operator has time to actually go out and resolve the problem. That's what we call the self-healing component. We could probably capture about 80% of our load as optional load, while the critical loads, such as the lights, the computers, and those things that we need to operate in our day-to-day lives, they stay on. Therefore, the consumer would never really see an event, but meanwhile we'd avoid a major catastrophic event, such as the loss of power to 50 million people.